If you're looking for the world's best CBD products, look no further than PalomaVerdeCBD.com, a like-minded business out of San Antonio, Texas, owned by a great couple, Carlos and Vanessa. They love the show. They're supporting the show. They're giving you a discount when you buy these products because you like this show. We'll get there at the end here, but I've been ranting and raving about the sports cream for a long time. It is the best. I genuinely mean that. So if you're sore from workouts, go check out the CBD Menthol Sports Cream. If you're having trouble sleeping, they've got the Sleep Bundle CBD Pack. Maybe you've got pets like I do, like my two French bulldogs, Lux and George, that experience inflammation in some part of their spine or their back legs or whatever. Well, look no further. They've got the pet tinctures and the CBD dog chews over at PalomaVerdeCBD.com. Do you have anxiety at all? Well, there's CBD gummies over there. Are you stressed after a long day? There's CBD bath bombs over there. They've got this new CBD massage oil. Carlos, one of the owners of Paloma Verde, keeps asking me if he can use it on me. I've not allowed him to do so yet, but I suspect that their CBD massage oil is quite amazing. So go check that out. All things CBD related, you will find at PalomaVerdeCBD.com. And since they support this show and they want to help the listeners of this show get a discount, I've got a promo code for you. It's BUCK, B-U-C-K. Just enter that at checkout. You will get 20% off of your order. That is BUCK, B-U-C-K, at checkout over at PalomaVerdeCBD.com. Tell them I sent you and enjoy the products. I know you will.
You are now listening to the Counterflow Podcast, a place for dissonant voices and unapproved opinions.
You get split in fucking half, but I call him the hologram brass. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid, and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Here is your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again to the Counterflow Podcast. Great to have you with me this week, and great to be joined once again by my friend Pete Quiñones today. Now that I think about it, I think this is the first time he's been on since he's had the rebrand of his show. You probably are aware that it was called the Free Man Beyond the Wall podcast, and now it is the Pete Quiñones Show. Did you also know he puts out a really good Substack that I recommend? And of course, I'm going to link to it in the show notes page for this episode. If you don't subscribe already, I think that maybe after this conversation we're going to have, you will want to subscribe because we're going to talk about some of the themes that he writes about in that Substack, and that would include this culture war that we're in, his thoughts on power. Is power itself immoral no matter what? Is it evil? Or maybe is it like a gun and that it's a tool that can be used for good as well as evil? Why are the forces of evil, speaking of evil, always coming after children? Isn't that sick and interesting? Maybe this battle goes deeper than just the material political world. We're going to discuss all of these things with Pete. Plus, what are his thoughts right now on libertarianism? Does he see it as helpful? Is libertarianism a tool that can lead to more good in this world? We're going to get into all of this stuff. He's the voice of the Pete Quiñones Show. He's the HMFIC over at the By Any Means Necessary Substack. My friend, Pete Quiñones, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
How are you doing, Buck? It seems like we may have just been on a show recently together, like a couple days ago.
I know. I feel like this is just going to be a continuation of the live stream that I was on with you. Should we just start talking about music? Because that actually got a lot of feedback more than I would have.
Fine with me, but yeah, they can go.
One thing I'm not sure that a lot of people know about you is that you were in bands and everything. Do you still play music ever, even around the house or anything?
I mean, I don't play. I don't pick up bass or guitar or anything.
You don't?
I don't sing. I don't sing anymore. I mean, by myself, if a lady begs me, maybe. Oh. But yeah, I don't play anymore. But I've been listening to music all day. So I've been listening to a lot of music. I've been eschewing the podcast and listening to a lot of music lately. Yeah.
That's funny. Brittany, my wife, said the same thing. I will ask her, "Hey, what'd you listen to on the way home?" And she said, "I'm podcasted out at the moment. I've just been listening to music." You get those same kind of cycles as well?
Yeah, and sometimes it'll just be like comedy. Like I did listen to one podcast today. It's Tim Pool's Patreon only. I mean, not Tim Pool. Tim Dillon. Tim Dillon's Patreon only. And
I was actually going to say I would be surprised if you. I don't know why you would be a Tim Pool Patreon. That would surprise me a little bit.
Yeah. No, it's Tim Dillon's Patreon only, and it was unbelievable. I mean, the guy's he's got the funniest thing going right now, as far as I'm concerned.
Your content production is your full-time job now, which a lot of us are envious that you get to do that. What do you do something every day? Do you sit like you're going to work kind of? And like, what does a typical day look like for you now?
I set my alarm for 7, no matter what. I just want to be up by 7. I'm usually up earlier. And coffee, meditation, then coffee. And then while I'm drinking coffee, I'll grab the laptop and I'll start seeing what's out there. If it's a Tuesday or a Wednesday, or a Tuesday or a Thursday, and normally those are the days I'll write Substacks, because I normally put them out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So over the weekend, I'll look for stuff. Stuff usually, Substacks really aren't that hard, especially if you're doing current events or you're raging against, the latest thing in the current year, so right. It's easy to find stuff. And then, I just schedule podcasts whenever, like it just so happens that I was looking at my podcasting schedule for the next few days and I'm like, holy crap. It's because I'm going to Childerberg. So I'm going to be gone for a bunch of days. So I have to have stuff to put out. And then the following weekend, I'm going to be back in Texas. So it's, I'm like piling up a lot of podcast interviews. I have, I think, 5 for my show in the next 3 days.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you put out 3 episodes a week. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I do one, as obviously as everyone listening to this knows. And sometimes it helps. I was going to say, it feels like a lot even to do one. My normal day job, if I'm at work, it's for 24 hours at a time. So that takes out multiple 24-hour time periods per week that I can't do this. But I don't see how someone like Tom Woods does 5 a week. To me, is just, I guess if that's what you're used to, it comes. Did you at one point just have 1 and then you moved to 3?
I had 1 and then I did 2. And then I would say from the time I started a Patreon, which was November-ish 2018, I just said, okay, if people are going to give me money, I'm going to put out 3 a week. And I've put out 3 a week now for almost 4 years. And it's sometimes like right now, I do not have my Friday episode. I do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday episodes. Mm-hmm. My Friday episode is out, but I don't have my Monday episode recorded and uploaded yet. So it's over the weekend. Tomorrow at 3 o'clock, I'm actually live streaming, and we're going to do it live with Charlemagne, with Charles, and we're going to talk about the rise of the dissident right. So that'll probably be Monday's episode. And then,
excellent.
Like I said, okay. I have more interviews over the next couple of days. Of course, Thomas. We got Thomas scheduled, so we can continue the World War II thing. And then I got Peter Brimelow got back to me, and I'll be talking to him on Tuesday. Yeah. So
wow, excellent. Yeah. So as this episode drops, people listening, Pete's episode with Charlemagne dropped yesterday. So if you don't follow Charlemagne or know his content, that's going to be a good one. So I would definitely suggest listening to it. We're not going to get into the drama of this past week because there was a lot, but obviously most people that know you wouldn't say that you shy away from being controversial ever, and that sometimes some people can find you a bit rough around the edges or get offended at some of the stuff you write or weird. But I'm curious, you must see things and hear things that people say. Do you see something often that's completely incorrect about you that people think or say? Like one kind of thing that you, what is it?
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, no, I mean, they're just common misconceptions about things that I believe. They a lot of straw man kind of stuff. Libertarianism and anarchism, voluntarism, whatever you want to use, has become so. I mean, such a echo chamber that as soon as anybody starts to question anything about it, you're automatically a statist. Now you love the state, you love the military, you love the police. These are all things that that I love now. And now someone's going to clip that and everything. So, but that's probably the thing, is just basically straw manning. Not bothering to ask me what someone asked me today. It's like, well, if you had power, would you kill me? I'm like, what's your problem, dude? I mean, seriously. Yeah. He asked me, like, if you had power, what would you do? I said, well, the first thing I would do right now is I would completely suppress all of these people who are looking to abuse children in the teachers, groomers, all of these people. I would basically look to change laws to go after them and put them on an island somewhere, Devil's Island or something like that, Papillon kind of thing. And I would seek to create the kind of society or the kind of culture that I would want. A culture of leave people alone, yes, but there's also an inclusiveness. I mean, if you're going to have a culture, it automatically demands that people think alike in certain ways. You have to think alike in everything, but culture is something that when I became a libertarian and up until just a few years ago, I didn't even consider. I thought it was something for like right-wing, pro-war right-wingers and things like that, Christians, things like that. And then you realize that culture is really important, especially when you see that the left has created a culture where they literally want to take your kids from you. In many cases, they want to take your kids from you, or if they can't take your kids from you, they will own their minds. And a culture that a culture that would put the family first, would protect people who just want to worship their God, worship and the Christian God, because you can worship any other God in this country, but don't bother worshiping Christ. I look at the founding and I see that they screwed up. Even John Adams said that this thing is not going to work unless we have people who are scrupulous and high moral character. And one of the problems is that we allowed a society to grow where high moral character and scruples were considered a punchline after a while. And radical egalitarianism and equality took over. And that's not going to get you where you need to go. It's not going to get you liberty. It's going to get you oppression. It's going to get you to where we are right now.
It seems to me there's a flaw. I don't know if it's inherent within libertarianism, but it's certainly been this way, in my opinion, and I think you would agree, but I'd like to get your opinion on it, and is that there is no cultural aspect of libertarianism, and there's this urge to say, well, you do what you want. Well, the bad people will easily take advantage of we will do what we want. And what are you going to do? Are you a closed-minded hypocrite if you're going to tell me otherwise? Do you see that kind of how libertarianism is so live and let live that it allows you to get trampled on by the bad people?
Sure. Yeah. And it's that thing, and it's not a straw man. I mean, I've watched people argue this, And I don't know that I've ever argued it in the past, but I've watched people argue this. I don't think that I've ever been what is termed a thin libertarian, where that's all that matters is the non-aggression principle. I don't think I've ever been all the way there, even in my libertarian phase. But you have this thing where it's like, as long as you're not violating the non-aggression principle, everything's okay. And it's not okay. Everything is not okay. I mean, if your town has prostitution on every street corner, I don't think everything's okay. I mean, well, first of all, the economics of the town probably really suck. And second of all, that's going to affect people's morale and their morals. I mean, you're basically, the default for your children now is that they ride around your town and there are women, men, children. We could see Weimar Republic conditions in this country if things keep going the way they are. And that's what it was there. It was men, women, and children, child prostitution with insane amounts of venereal disease and the debauchery and then the destruction of the currency, things like that. I mean, people have this idea that, hey, as long, it's like the whole homeschool thing. I tell people to homeschool all the time, but, if only 5% are homeschooling, that means 95% are going to progressive, boot camp, and they're coming out soldiers for progressivism. And you're the 5% that are being raised with the Ron Paul homeschooling, thing that, and I'm not putting down the Ron Paul homeschooling thing at all. I'm just using that as an example. The kids who are raised with that are being raised to, I don't know, think that politics is bad, power is immoral, things like that. But the other 95% are being raised to believe that the only way we're going to have egalitarianism and equality is if we get power. Well, I wonder if it's possible for 95% to oppress 5%. Probably. Now, what's funny though is, if you think about it, if those 5% were being raised in a certain way, I think 5% could dominate 95%. I think it could happen. We've seen it in the past, but you're going to have to change the culture. And changing the culture is not as easy as people think it is.
Yep. And one of the things I think that people like yourself and my show and Mark Claire and some of these people that get thrown into these categories that some people throw us into, we're not throwing pipe bombs and grenades to disrupt some social scene or something like that, where we're not changing our principles or coming after libertarians out of spite or any of these things. Oftentimes, I think, and Mark has said this many times, we're arguing against the us of 3 years ago. And I don't think that gets out there as much as it should. Can you talk about that and kind of dispel these rumors that, Pete's just changing his stripes again, or he's just mad he's trying to grow his numbers and diss on this group within the Libertarian Party? But can you talk to that and maybe that you're seeing some people make mistakes that you feel you've made in the past, and that's what you're arguing against?
Well, I think Mark Claire, in his episode where he addressed the whole Mises Caucus thing, did a really good job of pointing out that by alienating the Mises Caucus, you're not growing your numbers. You're actually losing downloads. And I told somebody today, I'm not going to say it publicly, but I told a friend today privately how many downloads I lost by doing this. And she freaked. I mean, she could not believe the number. But what's funny is I got them back. I got them back in the last 3 months. And if I told you the number and I told you how many I got back in the last 3 months, you'd freak out. Because it's either people who left and are realizing that maybe you, myself, Mark Clare, others were right. And there are some things wrong with plans that other people are putting together, or I'm just getting new people who are more interested in, moving beyond just the answer to everything is to give people economics in one lesson and ask them to read it. Now, changing stripes thing, yeah, I mean, that's probably the most common thing thrown at me. I've just become, over the last couple years, a voracious reader again. Somebody who is just reading, and a lot of it was audiobooks, but now I'm like going back to print. I mean, I just read a 600-page book cover to cover. I haven't read a 600-page book cover to cover in a very, very long time, but I wanted to read it. And what I'm finding is that once COVID started and I started questioning libertarian ideology, and I was like, maybe these were wrong questions of me to ask. Like, how come libertarian political theory has been around for 70 to 80 years and Austrian economics for well over 100, and everything there's no Whig theory of history. Nothing's getting better. Everything's getting worse. How come this hasn't influenced it? And how come whenever something bad happens, people don't go to the libertarians to ask for solutions, but actually start making fun of libertarians when things go bad? And I'm like, this is very interesting. So I started saying, well, maybe I should read books outside of libertarianism. So I started reading people who I knew used to be libertarians. And they're like, I'm not a libertarian anymore. So I start reading, Yarvin and others, and the books that he recommends reading. And I start reading about political power and like the theory of political power, the history of political power. And then I start realizing there's something missing that I think only Hoppe includes in his works. And I think that's another reason why a lot of libertarians don't like Hoppe, is because he's dealing in reality, which is another bad word, because reality, if you don't know this, I'll let everyone know. When you use the word reality, what an anarchist, voluntarist hears is statism. Yeah, it's just statism, and that's their straw man, because how would this work? And if this works, how come it's not working in reality right now? Well, we haven't told enough people. I mean, which just basically brings it back to evangelicalism and how similar to Christianity libertarianism is, and without the answer, without being able to when Christianity, sin, forgiveness of sin. Well, what's in the middle? Well, it's Christ. Okay. Libertarianism, this total state, and Capistan. Okay, how do you get there? They're Christianity. They're Christianity without Christ. They don't have the answer to do that. So maybe you look for answers as to why things are the way they are now, and then when you start reading Pareto, and you start reading Michelle, and you realize that we are run and always have been run by elites throughout history. And it's always going to be, Hoppe knows that even in Ancapistan, it will be run by elites, which is why he's like the only libertarian that I can even think of that's still calls himself a libertarian in ANCAP, who writes about elites and started the Property and Freedom Society to try to identify elites and try to train elites. And people don't get that right now. People go, oh, Nancy Pelosi's not in charge. Joe Biden's not in charge. Okay, who is? Oh, Barack Obama. Really? You think Barack Obama's in charge? You think, okay, Barack Obama and Susan Rice may be calling the shots. This is the theory I've heard. Probably the best theory I've heard is that Barack Obama and Susan Rice are probably pulling a lot of the strings. Who's pulling their strings? I mean, and I talked to James Corbett recently, and we were talking about transgenderism as a pathway to transhumanism. And we were talking about Ray Kurzweil, and Ray Kurzweil has been like the arch transhumanist for my lifetime, in my whole lifetime. And we talked about him, and we're like, okay, so he flies all over the world, and who's financing him? Who's been pulling his strings this whole time? Because he's not doing this all by himself. So once you realize that there are people, you don't know who's in charge, well, then you have to step back and you have to go, okay, well, you're not voting your way out of this. The whole idea of, maybe we need more political parties so that, maybe a 25% can get elected at some point early on. I think Lincoln in 1861 got 39%, won by that and everything. Maybe we need to go back to that. Nothing's going to get changed until we get better elites. Until we figure out who these elites are, clear them, which is a term that I've been hearing for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And they get replaced with people who, it's even like what Tucker Carlson said once. He said, I have no problem with elites. I just want impressive elites.
Yes.
And that's
Jeff
really
Dice,
what
Jeff Dice is good on this topic as well.
Yeah.
One of my favorite sponsors is back with us here on Counterflow. That would be Texas Scorecard. Anytime you want to find out anything that's going on in the Texas political scene without a bad propagandized media narrative, just visit Texas Scorecard. They were founded in 2015 by a former Ron Paul congressional press secretary. They're Texas-based, they're Texas-focused counterculture media organization. They've got so many cool things over at Texas Scorecard. Lots of podcasts, videos. Actually, I was a part of that. You can find a video there of me being interviewed in the Texas Scorecard studio. They've got live programming. They've got a print edition. They've got a very popular daily email newsletter highlighting the biggest stories of the day. They've even got a program to help grow the next generation of disruptors, and we like that. Their mission, disrupt statism and reconstitute self-governments. They are pro-citizen. They serve the grassroots against big government through narrative, tools, and information. They do not align with any party. I think that's very important. They work to hold lawmakers on both sides of the aisle accountable. They're a nonprofit. There's no paywalls. You guys aren't going to have to pay for any of this. The reporting is always free. Find them on all social media channels by searching Texas Scorecard. They're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all of that. You can sign up for their free daily newsletter at texasminute.com. That is texasminute.com. Think about this. They support this program for you guys. So just give them a look. Texas Scorecard. Anytime you want to find out the real deal of what's going on in the Texas political scene, Texas Scorecard is your one-stop shop. Let's get back to the show. I want to ask, speaking of us arguing with our former selves, think of the last, think of 2020, 2021, and to where we're at now. What are a couple of the biggest, you've kind of alluded to it a little bit, but what are a couple of the biggest takeaways you have where if you could go in a time machine with Marty McFly and go to 2019 Pete Q, what would you tell yourself and from the takeaways you've had over the last couple of years?
Well, I assume I can't change history. I'm only changing myself.
Correct.
Preparing myself. I would have started reading more dissident right kind of stuff earlier. I would have started diving deeper into Sam Francis, Paul Gottfried. I would have been reading a lot more Unqualified Reservations, a lot more Yarvin, Moldbug. I would have been diving deeper into like elite theory, Pareto, and Mosca, ruling class kind of stuff. And I would have just been better prepared. I think I was pretty well prepared. I think that I had such a paradigm shift in February of 2020. I think that there were a lot of people who understood what was going on. I think that I was one of them. I've, if you go back to February 23rd, 2020, with myself and Monica Perez, we nailed a lot of this stuff. We kind of knew what was happening, but I think I would have been much better prepared. It wasn't until the summer of that year, I had like Yarvin on for the first time. And we started talking more about elite theory. And I would have just been much better prepared I would have liked to have been able to tell people right from the start that the people who you think are in charge and doing all this, that's not who they are. We have to figure out who they are. Possibly I could have read Yarvin's, if I would have read his, what is that? What's the one where it's like a soft introduction to unqualified? It's like 11 chapters. It's like, the 11, like the,
is that not the open letter to progressives or something like that?
No. This one is, this one is where he's talking about, where it's like, it's 11 chapter overview of like his thought and his ideology, where he talks about building the antiversity.
Yes.
You heard that, where and everything. And
there's a YouTube, and his name's escaping me. There's a YouTuber that records really, he kind of goes through each of those chapters and gives his own kind of take on it.
The distributist?
He's not done it. Maybe
he's one of them.
I can't remember.
Yeah, he's a distributist.
There's a guy that's quit doing it for a while.
Yeah, Skeptical Waves just basically
Skeptical Waves
does
is always good. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there are, if you like, go to YouTube and you do Introduction to Moldbug or something, there are several ones. There's one that's like 6 or 7 parts that are like a half hour, 35 minutes each, and it will really nail it down. And what's funny is now when you now when I go back and listen to it, it's like I understand even more, because the first time you listen to it, you're like, this is Greek. Right. I have no clue what's going on. And then you like watch the world disintegrate for 3 months, and you go back to it and you get a little bit more of it. And then you watch everything just falling apart, and you go back and you're like, oh shit, now I'm starting to get this. And damn, this guy was writing this in 2007.
Exactly what I was about to say. Yeah, imagine that. Right. When we were all, and this is not a knock, I love Ron Paul as a person and everything he's done, but we're all part of the Ron Paul revolution, and Curtis Yarvin's writing these things that are so prescient, and you look at it now and it's like, how did he know these things? And we know how he did, kind of. We've had these discussions with him, but it is amazing. It's unbelievable. Yeah. I want to hit on some of the things you talk about in your Substack, because I told you the other night it's my favorite Substack. It's so concise, well written, and it's always topical, and it's stuff that I'm interested in. So I want to talk about some of it. We have a little bit. You're big on talking about the culture war. I think there's a blind spot with some libertarians on discussing the culture war. I think Dave Smith's very good at it, and I think that's what makes him one of the things, along with how articulate he is. But I think that's one of the things that makes him popular, is because this is something that people care about. How would you describe the sides in this culture war?
Well, what's funny is it was February 2021. I was sitting at work. I was still at my day job, and Jeff Dice called me, and we're just having a discussion. And if you're in a conversation with Jeff Dice, you're listening intently because you're going to learn. There's something you're going to learn. And he basically said to me, and I don't think he'd mind me saying this. He said, "I don't even really consider myself a libertarian anymore. There's like the side that wants me dead and the side that doesn't."
Yes.
And like ever since that day, I mean, that's just 16 months ago or something. That's been where I'm at. And and when I look at it, the amount of people who don't want me dead, as opposed to who do want me dead, seem to be mostly on the right. Mostly would call themselves right wingers, would call themselves conservatives, would call themselves Republicans. And that's a hard one for libertarians. At that point, I'm already questioning everything. My head is spinning. I'm reading everything that I can, and even now I'm reading books that are just changing my worldview even more, because I'm realizing that to be in a bubble of like an ideological bubble is so dangerous. Like physically, like it's dangerous to your health. It's dangerous to your life. It's politically dangerous. It's how they get in. It's how they can grow power when you're stuck in this bubble where you're like, I'm just going to be consistent. I'm going to be the most consistent moral person out there. Well, the social engineers in charge and the elites in charge, they're not. They don't care. And I'm not scared to die. I'm not ready to die. I definitely don't want to die by these people's hands. I don't want that. I don't want it to come from them. And so when he said that, it really just shook me. And I'm like, yeah, I think that that's where we're at. I mean, that's where I'm at still today. I just think that there are different things that I've picked up over the last 16 months, just reading constantly and talking to different people and getting different ideas and getting, another thing that is really, really important is talking to people who have studied revisionist history. Because the history we've been taught, even in the 20th century, is lies. They're outright lies. So I'm doing this series with Thomas 777 that is literally changing my viewpoint on numerous things and changing my opinion to the point where there are things I can't say because they're just not allowed. You're just not allowed to say them. It's almost illegal in this country to say some of the things that once you start delving into what really happened, and you're like, oh, okay, so this person might have been the good guy, and this person was the bad guy. Well, I didn't learn that in school. I learned the exact opposite. And once you do that, there's a reason why, you talk about changing stripes. I wrote that down because, you mentioned it, and it's probably one of the things that I get nailed with. People try to nail me with the most. The people who are throwing that at me, they don't have a clue as to how the world operates, as to how the government operates, as to how the culture operates, as to, they're still saying politics is downstream from culture, where culture is downstream from power. And you're like, okay, well, who has the power? And there could be some cyclical things to that, where it could actually go back and forth sometimes. But for the most part, the politics right now is all about transgenderism. It's about teaching kindergartners about their teacher's sexuality. I mean, I didn't even know I didn't know a teacher's first name until I got to high school. And that didn't come from the culture. It came from somewhere else. It came from people who put that there, people who inserted that in and had the power to insert it in. Well, how do you fight that? Well, what's the libertarian answer for that? Don't send your kids to school? Okay, let's go back to that 95% number.
Right.
Well, your kid is going to, when they grow up, are going to be surrounded by lunatics. 19-1. Good luck. I mean, good luck. I mean, if you think things, people have to instinctively have that Whig theory of history where they think things are going to get better. And things never, people realize things never get better. I mean, you will have okay, so the Depression happened, things were really bad, and we pulled out of the Depression. Okay. That just changed circumstances. That just changed the circumstances of your life. What I'm talking about cultural. I'm talking about something that's actually metaphysical, something that can't be seen. And in many ways, when it comes to libertarianism, there is no door open for the metaphysical. Everything is a math equation. And if you just perform, if you just follow each step properly, we'll get to here. That's not how it works. It's never worked like that.
Well, that can be once the evil people understand that that's what the thought process is, you can take advantage of that very easily, obviously. And you just talked about something that you write about. I laughed out loud as I read. You compared something like, well, libertarians will say in response to the mess that the school system's in, homeschool, or and all public schools should be ended. And that's like someone jumping out of a plane and going, I need help. And they yell, well, end gravity. And because it's like, that's not an option at this current moment. So you have to work within the confines of this system. And if you do that, sometimes, like you alluded to earlier, you're called a statist. And it is crappy to think, maybe I'll run for school board, because that's not a very sexy position, and it would be tedious meetings, and you would be putting up with the most mundane garbage. But I would suggest, if there are people listening that can't homeschool, I mean, if I had kids, which at some point I hope I do, and if I didn't homeschool, which is I would probably run for school board, because I mean, you have to get some type of control over this situation if it's possible at all. I don't see many other ways. I'm not just going to walk out with a picket sign saying end schooling. I mean, it doesn't make any sense anymore. And I think I had been told through the years, it's funny, now I look back at certain things I was told by either my parents about libertarianism or friends that weren't libertarian. Sometimes they were right. And I was told, you guys sure aren't, you don't have a very good a sense of empathy towards people that aren't libertarians. Do you? And I would argue, yes, we do. We don't want them to be taxed. Do you see that as well about the empathy thing?
Sure. I mean, if you're going to tell somebody who just lost their kid in Afghanistan that they died for nothing, okay, so you're right. Yeah, it's the same thing as the whole, as long as you follow the non-aggression principle, nothing can go wrong. Sure, you're right. What did you just do? I'm really convinced, and maybe I used to think like this. I'm not sure. I'd really have to meditate on it. That I think libertarians they don't care if other people believe what they do or they grow a movement, as long as they're right. As long as they're right. Because let's face it, if you're a libertarian, you're taking the L. You're taking the L every single time. You are not going to win anything. So what else do you have other than being right? And
that gives you some shelter, knowing that you're going to lose, because you can sit there and say, well, I told you it would have been this way if we would have won. It's this like weak shelter kind of, where it's an escape of like, look, I'm the consistent one. I have the principles. And again, for my listeners, I'm not knocking libertarians as a whole at large. I'm again arguing at my old self, because I used to do this. It's so easy to sit on the sidelines when you have no skin in the game and pretend that you're the most principled. There's this kind of shelter that it gives you.
And another thing that you do is you look for victories that mean nothing.
Yeah.
I think we both know what I'm referring to.
Yeah. Yes.
You look for victories that aren't going to move the needle. You're not going to move the needle. But at least I got this W. I got this W under my belt. And
it's always a W that the opposing side in this culture war would be fine with.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's like, oh, you took over the Libertarian Party? It's like, imagine telling the elites. Imagine sitting there with a bunch of elites. And I'm talking about like, I always refer to like before, I think the Sacklers, the reason why they were exposed is because they probably went to war with another set of elites, and another set of elites exposed them. But 10, 12 years ago, the Sacklers were probably the most powerful family in the country, And imagine going to the Sacklers and saying, yeah, we're coming after you. We just took over the LP. Okay, good luck.
Right.
But who took down the Sacklers? Other elites, which is why Hoppe, and what's funny is I'm going to bring up Hoppe and I'll come back to it, why Hoppe always talks about elites. But we're talking about libertarianism in general. There's a great page on Facebook. It's still up. It's called The Narco-Christian. Bunch of Christians, and it's ecumenical. They're anarchists. Nicest guy. I've had the guy who started the page and has the podcast on my show a couple times. Great guy, Steven. Amazing guy. I remember going onto that page one day, and there was a poll that somebody had started. Steven didn't start it. Said, who is a bigger statist, Hans Hermann Hoppe or Murray Rothbard? And the first thing I thought to myself is, what's the purpose of this other than virtue signaling?
Yeah, who cares would be my first thought.
Yeah. I mean, you're just virtue signaling. You're like, what you're basically saying is that I'm a better anarchist than Hans Hermann Hoppe and Murray Rothbard. And I looked at that and I'm like, these people honestly think that they're not going to have to do anything to get to where they want to go. And maybe politics is not the answer. I'm even more and more as I read, I'm like, I think we're going to need a Caesar. I think we're going to need a great man to overturn this if it doesn't fall apart all on its own. And if it falls apart all on its own, believe me, they have a backup. They already have a plan in place for what happens next. But yeah, I mean, I understand because it's my former self too. I've gone back to my Facebook account that I started in 2018 to promote the show got nuked. So the only Facebook account I have is my Facebook account from like 2008, 2009. And it's showing me posts from like 2017 and 2016. And I'm like, oh my God.
Do you cringe?
I was so cringe. I was such a cringe monster. Oh my goodness. And there are people maybe not listening to this or hate listening to this who are like, yeah, that's the Pete we love. Why can't you go back to being like that Pete? Well, because that Pete would have you, do absolutely nothing except, chant, read Rothbard and end the Fed and things like that.
There's a lot of people that are considering getting the heck out of the United States these days. It was COVID tyranny. It still is in a lot of places, but who knows? Maybe it's climate change tyranny coming next. If that's you and you're thinking about exploring life in another country, I've got an amazing resource to share with you, and that would be the Expat Money Show, hosted by Mikkel Thorup. Whether it's foreign residencies, second passports, asset protection, or just protecting your money from the tyranny of taxation, there is no better resource than the Expat Money Show. That is for certain. Mikkel has spent over 20 years traveling the world, visiting more than 100 countries while living in 9 different countries over that time. He can help you legally eliminate your tax bill and travel the world in the process. So, doesn't that sound fun? It is pretty damn appealing, I gotta admit. Subscribe to the Expat Money Show today, available on podcatchers everywhere, YouTube, or just head over to expatmoneyshow.com. It's funny you say that, and this wasn't me, but I saw a page recently, and again, for libertarians listening, I am not knocking you, most of you at all, because a lot of you are my friends and support me, and I appreciate that. But I saw a libertarian page, and I won't even specify what it was because I don't want to knock anyone in particular. But it was from 2021, I believe, a post, and it was this constitutional event that was happening, of course, regarding masks and whatnot. And someone representing the LP went down to set up their booth, and lo and behold, they saw too many Trumpers and Alex Jones people and people who were going to say there should be no laws making people wear masks or everything. And they turned around and packed up the stuff for the LP representation and left. because they didn't want to be associated with those people. It's okay to wear a mask if you want to, was even in the post. And I had forgotten about that. And I thought, wow, sometimes it sounds like to some people like we're straw manning some of the LP stuff, but that's really what was written and what I saw. They didn't want to be associated with Trumpers, Alex Jones types, and people that are saying no one should be wearing masks because they don't work.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things is, obviously, since COVID started, I've changed a lot, changed my thinking on a lot, and done a lot more study, to get beyond just reading about what, what I've said, how many anarchists can dance on the head of a pin in Ancapistan. And a lot of times I just don't know how we all didn't, how everyone didn't. Everyone who's a libertarian,
I agree,
didn't go, what the hell? How did this happen? This is worse than after 9/11. As someone who was an adult when 9/11 happened and watched it, I remember, I'm so fucking old, I smoked on a plane.
Yeah.
I've smoked on a plane. I've met people at the gate when they're landing.
Yes.
That's how old I am. And there are people who don't realize that. So after 9/11, I'm like, man, the world is really changing. And then like COVID started, and I would say by late March, probably the first episode that Vin and I started recording, I was like, my world is gone. And if people do not see, I do not know how people see this, that this is worse than after 9/11. Anyone who lived through, I knew before, I knew there were going to be mandates for vaccines, there were going to be mandates for passports. I've been studying all this stuff for years. And, I had anti-vaxxers on the show before COVID, because I'm one of those people who's like, you don't have to get vaccine. I don't care. Your unvaccinated kids can be around me. They're not going to kill me. Okay. I know they're not going to kill me. Okay. Because I had the vaccine. My parents, I grew up overseas. The only way I could come back into this country was to have every vaccine. And, so I just didn't know how people didn't see it. So when people see me being, getting short, impatient with people, it's because how the didn't you see? Why aren't you, even if you're not on my level, to read the shit that I've read and everything, to put all this extra shit in my head that's just completely, rattled me. How are you not just like, questioning? Well, this ideology it's not going to work. It's not going to happen. It's, even if you think it can work, even if you still have that in your head, you have to accept that it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in your lifetime, and the lifetime of your kids. I've taken to agreeing with Walter Block. Walter Block said, we will not have anarchism unless there is like an evolutionary shift. And I remember the first time he said that on my show, it was like episode 101 or 102 or something like that. And I was floored. I was like, man, just put a dagger in my heart. But it's obvious now. You're not going to have these things. You can have pieces of it. You can have things that resemble it, but they're not. You're not going to get there, and it's definitely not going to look like what you look. It's probably going to be closer to a Amish community with technology, like an Amish community with technology, and you can wear bright colors. That's probably closer to what it would look like. And they don't want to, and it's going to be a bunch of people who are scrupulous, moral, high trust, and low time preference. And I know people hate to hear that, but that is the kind of people you do not, if you are going to have a private city right now, or you're going to put together a community, you do not want anyone who does not fit that bill. Because you can, Hoppe says, you can have your your covenant community over here that you love, the people you love, and then you can have the commie covenant community over there. And he knows when he says you're going to have the commie covenant community over there, that they're going to kill each other within a month.
Yeah.
They're going to kill each other. And anything...
And want to infiltrate yours.
Right. Then that's why you have to pick them off from 300 yards.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're not... there is a reason why, Rothbard in the 90s and Hoppe have said, and it's not going to work unless you have like Christian values, and it's going to have to be that terrible, terrible word or phrase.
Yeah,
right wing.
Yeah,
like true right wing.
One of the other things you've written about recently, and it's a topic that Matt Erickson and Andrew and myself and Carlos, we spoke about it when Carlos just had his Los Libertinos, shout out to Carlos, his 1 year anniversary show episode the other day, and we went down there and did a live thing.
Cool.
And it kind of freaked Carlos out. And Carlos, if you're listening, I hope you are listening to this, because this will be interesting for you. And this is something that Pete's written about and that we've spoken about privately and whatnot. But evil spirits and that it doesn't freak me out at all that we believe this and think that we see this. And it is interesting because another friend, mutual friend, I think probably mutual friend, is Robbie the Fire. And when I did his show in Mexico, a live thing, I brought it up so casually that I believe that there's evil spirits and that they're infiltrating people's minds, and that's why we see a lot of this. And Robbie goes, "Whoa, evil spirits? Are you being serious?" And it's such a thing that I see and think about all the time now that it was like, well, why does that surprise anyone? That's interesting. Can you talk about when you started to see this? Your religious background is quite extensive, and I know you've done a lot of studies over the years. Is it something that you've seen more recently, or have you always kind of thought this? And kind of talk about how it's manifesting itself these days.
It's a great manifest is a great word. What's funny is back when I was in church and I was, prayer service, prayer group on Wednesday night and prayer group on Saturday night for the Sunday services, and then Sunday services, and then Sunday evening services, and any meals and, fellowship and everything like that. I fought back against how much people would put, blame a lot of things on spiritual warfare, like on spirits, just because it was very... I know when I got into when I immediately started studying scholarship, and that's what it was. It was study to me. And it wasn't really until probably like 2012, 2013, when I was, I learned how to meditate in like 2008. I've meditated every day since 2008. And it's the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning. And I learned a meditation. I talked about this with Vin actually on probably the last time he and I recorded, where I learned this meditation. It was from Edgar Cayce. And Edgar Cayce he was a medium. He was a go-between. And I was doing one of his meditations. And I felt like something was trying to get into my body. Like something was trying to invade my body. And right about then, that's when I started to, and I wasn't drunk, I wasn't high, I was stone cold sober. And I actually think that I was doing this in the middle of the afternoon. Normally I do it very early in the morning. I think this was in the middle of the afternoon. And it scared the crap out of me. And I never did that meditation, that's kind of meditation again. Come forward to like 2016, 2017. And when you start seeing the way a lot of the protests on the left were carried out and a lot of the reactions, I thought to myself, either they're great actors, which they could be, or there's something other there. And I put that on the back burner. I didn't want to talk about it because I was a good libertarian, and libertarians are materialists. They're not you talk about materialism. You don't talk about metaphysics. And when I say materialism, people, I'm not talking about like love of money.
Right. Can we clarify that real quick? Because there are a lot of people, including the old me, once again, that do think that. Will you just clarify it so people understand that?
Sure. Materialism, in a very crude explanation, is just believing that this is all there is the material world. What you can see, what you can feel, what you can touch is all there is. Metaphysics is you believe that there are things that exist that you can't see, and the soul, believe in the soul, things like that. Yeah. Come forward to COVID. I've just believed that the world has been demon infested since March. They've run loose. They're like on the loose. They're everywhere. And I think that part of the reason why I rejected so much was I really felt like if I even gave an inch, that I could open the door for something. And I think that you see it in a lot of people. I've seen it in people that I care about, who open the door. And so I think we see it now. Rachel Tobias and I just did this episode where I think what do we title it? Social engineers tapping into demonic forces or something like that. It's just something direct that she and I have talked about privately. And she said one day we're texting back and forth, and she's like, how do we answer for demonic forces? And I'm just like, fuck, I don't know. And she just, it's like every once in a while she'll say something like in a text, and I'll read it, and it'll just completely blow my mind. Yeah, and she just said, how do we politically, like when you're setting up your politics, when you're setting up your strategy, for taking over anything. It doesn't even have to be the Libertarian Party. Anything. It could be GOP. It could be anything. Are you taking, if you believe in demons, if you believe in spiritual wickedness, are you taking this into consideration? Is that is that built into your political plans, the way you see the world, politically? Because if you see the world religiously and you think that there is spirit, well, I mean, obviously you're going to have to work that into your politics too, because what would be an easier vessel for a demon than an empty vessel like a politician?
Yes.
I mean, come on, this is common sense stuff. I mean, the movie They Live is, and I have the movie poster on my wall downstairs. I have to when I walk into my bedroom, I have to look at it, and it's seeing behind what it is. And it was a perfect allegory for, I think, what Carpenter, saw in our politicians and the people in charge. So,
shout out to Roddy Piper.
Oh man, he was the best.
Yes, and that a little bit that ages you and me. I know you're just a touch older than myself, but you young people listening, if you have not seen They Live and you like this show and you like Pete and his show, you have to see They Live. I know you would appreciate it. It might look a touch old, possibly, with some of the way they film certain things, but it's got one of the best fight scenes in it. And it was way ahead of its time.
You got to get past the first. Okay, it has the longest. Well, I think it had the longest opening without anybody saying anything until There Will Be Blood. Until There Will Be Blood came out, and so you got to get past that, because what they're doing is it's basically cinematography. They're showing you what the world is in this opening. I think it's the first 10 or 12 minutes without any dialogue. You're just showing you what the world is. And once you get past that, and then you're going to watch one of the most entertaining movies you'll ever see. And it was funny. I had mentioned They Live on Twitter the other day, and somebody said, yeah, that amazing fight scene where it's like, it's just haymaker and uppercut after uppercut. And it's like it's like everybody's jaw's made of concrete. Because it's like, your jaw would have been in pieces after that fight.
Yeah, quickly.
It still is one of the best fights ever. Oh my goodness.
Yes. And of course, people just go watch it. This is a topic that, and this is our last topic.
Sure.
But I knew I was interviewing you, and I thought I'm optimistic. Often, I try to at least look at the bright side of things. And I thought, if I ask Pete this, he's going to be like, "Dude, you're fucking blue-pilled." Excuse my language. It does seem the mask mandates largely are gone. The jab restrictions have been largely lifted. The regime, at least the people that we see in charge, the faces of the regime, I'm not sure I've ever seen a lower IQ group of faces that are supposed to be in charge. Almost every single one down the line. Usually there's a handful of people that you're like, Obama obviously was seemingly smart. You knew Dick Cheney was pulling some strings, Paul Wolfowitz, these guys that were unfortunately probably fairly smart. But man, the current crop's rough. They're losing popularity day by day. Tucker Carlson's by far the most popular name in any news, including with Democrats, which I find interesting.
Actually, that would be Joe Rogan.
CNN, fair point. I meant cable news, but
right,
fair point. And actually, I look at that as an optimistic thing, even though I'm not a diehard Rogan fan by any means, but I certainly think he is a good gateway, more so than some of those intellectual dark web types even. CNN's crumbling. DeSantis is ruling like a king, like a good king should down there. Are these signs, do you think, that are pointing towards an optimistic future in the next couple of years? Or do you think no, don't let the optimism creep in? There's still a lot of, and I know that there are still a lot of roadblocks ahead, of course, especially when it is spiritual, which I ultimately think it is. But what do you think about some of the good things that seem to be on the radar?
Well, when you look at something like DeSantis, it has to be promising in that he has so much support. There are so many people who support what he's doing. And basically what he's doing is he's rolling like an autocrat. And unfortunately, we've come to a time when we need autocratic rule. We need good people who are on our side. And I know that DeSantis is a Zionist. You don't have to tell me this. You don't have to tell me. You don't have to tell me all the bad things. But what I will tell you is Florida, a place where I lived for 19 years, is their number one product is tourism. Yeah. Tourism runs that state. And DeSantis, by deciding to, I think he only closed down for 5 to 7 days. Trying to remember that he did close down. People don't remember that they did shut down. Because I remember, because Tom Woods lives in Florida, and he came up to Georgia because I was in Georgia at the time, and Georgia opened up. Georgia opened up before, and we went to lunch. He and I had lunch on May 1st, 2020, in a restaurant in Atlanta. So think about that date, because every other state, most states are closed down still, and we're out in a restaurant without masks on at the table and drinking and having a good time. And, but he did a really good job of opening that state, keeping it open, and doing everything he could so that the tourism industry could thrive. Now, a POS Libertarian Party governor running would have probably stolen enough votes away from him that they would have got a black crackhead Democrat governor in there, and he would have shut down that state and absolutely destroyed it and destroyed everyone's life in there. So, do elections matter? That one did. Okay. I'm not, I don't know about elections nationally anymore. I watched half of 2,000 Mules yesterday, and it made me absolutely sick.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
Is that out of curiosity? Is that worth watching?
Yeah. It's so clear. It's so clear it's so clear that what they did. I mean, they have video. They have video footage. You know, they're able to track one person going to 37 drop boxes in a day.
That's what I've
and then
I've
doing
heard,
it on the same person doing it on multiple days. Come on.
They've got their cell phone ping too, correct?
That's how they track them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So, and then you see, people are taking their, more than one ballot, putting it into the ballot drop box, and then taking a picture of it. Them doing it, they were getting paid to do this, and they had to get footage of. You see all these people doing it, putting in multiple ballots, and taking a picture of themselves doing it.
I wonder who's paying them. I wonder if some of that money was funneled through Ukraine.
They had one. They had one woman. This was in Georgia, and I believe this was actually for the Senate race in Georgia, where she had gloves on. Okay, remember COVID? Okay, so she walks up. She walks, and because you have to think. She has a mask on. She has gloves on. Okay, well, COVID exists. So she walks up to the drop box, opens the box, puts a bunch of ballots in there, turns around, takes the gloves off, and throws them at a wastebasket on the street, a garbage basket that she didn't look at when she walked up to it. When she walked up to the ballot box, she knew that garbage thing was there. She had been there before. Yeah. I mean, this is come on. So, one of the things I said when again mentioning Vin, when we did our episode talking about the Molly Ball article in Time about how they fortified the election, was how does anybody read this and trust that another election will ever be on the up and up again?
Right.
So do I see things that are promising? Mostly on the local level, sometimes on the state level. I believe that they will, if they feel like they're losing their grip, and there's a chance. So we have the midterms coming up. I almost expect another COVID thing to happen. I mean, just because they know that it's going to be a red.
Yeah, they're going to get slaughtered.
It's going to be a red wave. Yeah. I mean, it's just going to. So I expect some kind of shenanigans. But let me tell you something. If there's no COVID or nothing, and we just go up to this election, and the blue team wins.
Oh my!
Come on.
Then it's.
Clear them out.
Then it's going to be rough. That's the red state types. They can only be tamed for so long. That would possibly put it over the top.
Well, I don't know if it would, but it would definitely, that phrase about clear them out would definitely be a part of more people's vocabulary. Because if you've sold, that everybody gets a vote and everything like that, which is watch 2,000 Mules. It's really good, actually. And I need to finish watching it tonight. But if you've been sold that, hey, we all get a vote, we get to choose everything, and then you realize that's no more, what do you do? What do you do? I know what I would do, and it's not what people would think. I would keep saying what I think people should do, but I know what I would do. Well, I don't know that I would keep saying what I think people should do. I'm going to keep educating people on what's happening, why this happened, who's in charge. And, I don't have the names of the people who are in charge, but I can tell you how this works. And that's the reason I'm keeping on doing this, is because the more I learn how this actually works, and then I listen to my former self who had no clue. And I listen to so many people now who are following, thousands of people who are following people, as soldiers in this army who have no clue how power works, how the system works, who's really in charge. I'm just have to keep telling people until, I want that Caesar to come along and make it so that I can do my podcast just on history. I don't have to talk about. I'd just love to have a history podcast where people come on, people like Thomas 777 to come on and just talk about revisionist history and stuff like that, and just talk about fun stuff. Do music episodes, things like that.
Yeah,
But it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think it was Corbett. James Corbett was on my show. I think it was him that said, "If you know the people's names, they're not in power."
Yeah.
Which that's always stuck with me.
Yeah.
We'll plug away now. I guess plug anything you'd like. Let me ask you this real quick before we do the plugs. I don't know if a lot of the folks know this. Is it okay if we talk about where you live now?
Sure.
Okay. How's Auburn, Alabama?
It's great, man. I mean, it's funny because I've been here a bunch of times. Obviously, I lived in Atlanta's only an hour. Atlanta's only an hour and a half up the road. So, the Mises Institute is here. So I've been here many, many times, and I just knew that it was a college town. And I found a neighborhood that is mostly like families and postgraduates, and like postgrads. And so it's like the postgrads are doing mostly study. They're quiet as heck, and the families are just families. So it's really nice. I've had people come to visit. My ex-wife came to visit. She loves the place I got and everything like that. And she actually likes the town. Her mom came, and her mom's considering moving here because it's so much cheaper. You can get for $500 less a month when you're just renting. You can get 3 times the space than you can get for 500 more in Atlanta. Or like
wow,
like a 1-bedroom, 1 bath in Atlanta, even outside of Atlanta, you look at $1,500 to $1,000. I mean, $2,000 a month in rent. You can get a 3-bedroom, 2-bath here for $1,000, $1,100.
Wow. Okay.
And you have to do it during August though. Because of the college. All of the leases start August and go to August. So I was lucky to move here in February and be able to get this place was open. And I love this place. I mean, I was like, this is the nicest place I've ever lived in. And it's just so open and so big. And it's, Jeff Deist and I have lunch and every so often, because he's busy as hell and he travels, and I've been traveling a lot lately, and I'm going to be traveling a lot over the next next month or so. And it's just a great place, and it's a college town. So, you are here's the thing though, you don't get as much of the woke here because the college students are fully aware that they are surrounded by rednecks with guns.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. So you get a little bit of it. You get some, but there's also, because it's a big sports school as well, you have a lot of jocks and everything like that, and they tend to be less woke and things like that. So I see them out and I talk to them sometimes, and it's all cool. It's great. It's a great place to live, man. I hope that it doesn't become like a blow up place, like it blows up and everything, and like a bunch of people start moving here, but it is one of those places that once you get settled, I mean, everything that I want is like 10 minutes. So it's like the grocery store is 5 minutes, Walmart's 10 minutes, the Ace Hardware is 5 minutes, and everything is right here. So,
Excellent. Now you can plug away, and I've been talking about your Substack throughout this. I've sprinkled it throughout this episode, so obviously talk about that and plug anything you'd like.
Sure. The Substack is by any means necessary. It's petequiñones.substack.com. That is, I try my best to post there 3 times a week. It could be anything. Today, what I put out was less than 100 words. Most of the time I'm putting out something that's 400 to 500 words, at the most 800. I want to keep it short. People will read it. And I also don't write in article form or what they call AP form. I write like I'm writing you a letter. So I think a lot of people like that.
Yes.
The podcast, 740 episodes right now. I know I think of people like Scott Horton and Tom Woods and Jack Spirko, and I'm like, oh God, I'm way behind. But 740 episodes. Used to be called the Free Man Beyond the Wall podcast. It's the Pete Quiñones Show now. And, that's my baby. That's how people really got to know me, got to know my voice. And, it's always funny when I'm at an event and I'm talking and then someone turns around and they're like, hey, I recognize you from your voice. And that'll never grow old. That'll always be cool.
You and Tom, I noticed being around y'all in person, Tom Woods and you have that, it's like, oh, I hear him over there, I think y'all are the only two where it's like, that's Tom Woods and I'm not even looking. And there's Pete. Obviously, and your webpage and how they, excuse me, listeners, how they can support you if they'd like to do so.
Sure, many ways. I prefer on my website, freemanbeyondthewall.com/store. I have it basically set up like Patreon there, except I get to keep more of the money. I do have a Patreon still. Just look for the Pete Quiñones Show. Subscribe Star, I still have people on there. Pete Quiñones Show again. Substack, you can subscribe $8 a month. And I just set up my YouTube channel so that you can subscribe to my YouTube channel and donate that way too. I think it's like $9.99 a month or something like that. Because the YouTube, I'm doing more live streams now.
Oh, cool.
And the live streams are becoming. I used to do a live stream and like 10 people would show up, and it's like now I'm getting 10 times that. And then the Yarvin and Aaron McIntyre one had up, like, I think at one point there was like 300 people. And I know that's not Tim Pool level, but for somebody who's really just starting to get into live streaming, it makes me happy. And it's also very interactive. You were just on my last live stream. It's very interactive. People are throwing questions. You don't know what the question is going to be, whether it's going to be, well, who's your favorite drummer, or what do you right. So it's a lot of fun.
Yes. It was a lot of fun. Cool, man. And as this drops, I'll see you this weekend for you guys listening, and girls, of course. We're going to be at
Childerberg
in Texas, just a couple of hours from me. And that should be damn fun. Pete Quiñones, my friend, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Buck. Always.
Yeah, you got it. All right. Nice work, Pete. Always a pleasure to have you on here. Thank you so much. And for you guys listening, go sign up for his stuff. I'm telling you, that Substack's really good. It's always just the perfect amount of words. And he kind of alluded to that, but it's not one of these ones that's too long and it's going to take all morning to read. I always enjoy it. Very good topics. And like I said, a lot of them we hit on today. If you'd like to support this show, you are more than welcome to. I always welcome new supporters. And every penny I make at the Patreon over there goes back into this show. You've got my word on that. It's over at patreon.com/counterflow. So I would appreciate that. The website, counterflowpodcast.com. Of course, on Twitter, follow me at Buck Rebel, BuckRebel. And the YouTube channel, those subscribers are slowly ramping up. I neglected it for so many years, and now we're trying to get it going. Every interview I do, including this one that you just heard with Pete, is on the YouTube channel. You can watch it if that's how you prefer to take in this content. And last night, as this episode drops, we did a live stream. We had Father John Whiteford, we had Rebecca, Dissident Mama on there, and Jim Jatras and some others, George. We took apart that nasty hit piece that NPR did on Orthodox Christianity. So if you didn't see it as it aired live, you can go to the YouTube channel. It's only there. It will not be in the podcast feed that you're used to getting. So go check out the YouTube page, Counterflow with Buck Johnson. Obviously, search that in the YouTube search bar and you'll find us. Hit subscribe and you'll see some of these live streams that are only available at the YouTube route. And so thank you guys very much for always supporting me and being here once again with me. Until next week, have a good one.
You get split in fucking half, like on the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Counterflow podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.